I used to hate TypeScript. Back in 2015, I was an Angular developer looking forward to Angular 2, but then I saw that they were using TypeScript for it. All the examples were default in TypeScript, and it seemed like they're trying to force something onto people that I saw as basically an abomination. This extra ugly syntax just infesting all the code. Just it's everywhere. And why can't I just use regular JavaScript? Why do you have to do so many changes all at once? That like Angular was so ambitious with all the different changes it added that I was like, why on top of all of that are you doing TypeScript? Did anybody ask for this? But now I think that adding TypeScript and adding RxJS were the two things that were unquestionable good decisions for Angular. I think that those were the best decisions they made, and a lot of the other things I think are questionable now. So, yeah, I'm going to explain why I thought that TypeScript sucked. These are the reasons, and I'm going to include some details that probably are reasons that I shouldn't have. They're not like what a good developer should believe, but I'm just going to be honest with my experience and how I saw TypeScript and gradually how that changed. So the first concern I had was it was just a lot more to learn on top of, a new framework and all that stuff. In programming, it's hard enough as it is and just trying to get features done. And then you add this extra syntax and these extra rules on top of it. And I just saw it as something that might just overwhelm my brain and that would like make me crash and get stuck in places I would never have gotten stuck before. And that has been true a bit. But yeah. So honestly, though, the best thing about TypeScript for beginners is that you don't actually have to commit to it completely. You can only use it when it actually provides you value. And there are some developers who go crazy and they have like even no explicit any in their ESLint rules. And I just think that's ridiculous because if it should be your choice whether you type something as any or not. Basically, any is a way to like pull an escape hatch and just say, don't have an opinion about this. Get out of my way. I'm just going to code this like it's regular vanilla JavaScript. And yeah, so that really alleviates the too much to learn up front. It really is something that is like a separate process from the normal problem solving process if you want it to be. So that's not that ended up quickly for me not being a real concern. Basically, as soon as I looked into how to upgrade to TypeScript, I noticed that, oh, actually, the first step is to just type things as any. Okay, that's easy. So, yeah. So let's look at this example. This is a React component that has props that are typed as this. There's a property called message, and it's supposed to be a string. So you do export type child props. And then you can use that here in the function arguments. So then you destructure, get the message out, and you put it in the JSX. So, but this is strongly typed. And so if you're using that component, it's going to complain if you pass in the wrong thing. But you can actually just type your stuff as any and not worry about it. That is something you can do. This is vanilla JavaScript. And in my opinion, all this together is better than vanilla JavaScript because at least you have the option to have something that's type safe. So, and it can actually help you avoid problems because if you unwittingly accept a number there, then you can get a warning that you're passing in the wrong thing. You can say, message is missing in type X number, but message. Oh, I changed it. Okay. Yeah, it'll tell you if you have the wrong property entirely. But anyway, so it is a tiny bit extra syntax, but it's nothing but helpful. If you whatever value you want to get from it, you can get from it. Yeah, and then here, you can, it's flexible. You can use as any to retype it as any. So any means I don't care. And yeah, so yeah, it's very flexible. Okay, so the second concern I had was how verbose it was. Just looking at it, it's just like blah, just so much text, just full, like this function that's full of text. And you see examples. When you look at like hello world examples, you're going to have like these annotations everywhere, but you don't need these. This is kind of like a beginner's example. I don't know anyone who really does it like this anymore. This is easily inferred by TypeScript. It knows it's a string. You know it's a string by looking at it. So why this is redundant and pointless. So yeah, if you mouse over here, it knows actually the exact value it is, but it's because it's a const. It knows that it's always going to be this exact value. So TypeScript's pretty smart. So yeah, and so what I end up finding is that I only really define types in one place, and that's like the input of the application. So like API endpoints or unpredictable things, like if you're doing like query selector for the DOM for some reason, just whatever there's like unknown stuff, if you type the response, then everything downstream can be inferred. And so it's really not going to change too much in your code. So yeah, I hated that. I hated that when I first saw those examples. I'm like, why? All right, I'm trying to pursue minimalism, but now we're going to add extra syntax. Like, I didn't want to do it. But then this one is one thing that was huge for me. This was, in my opinion, the best thing about TypeScript, because as a developer, I always felt insecure that I never validated my function inputs. Everyone said you're supposed to, and I get why it was not safe to not validate the inputs. So this is how you do that, or how you did it with Vanilla.js. This is an example I took from somewhere. And so yeah, it's saying if the developer didn't pass in a string, throw an error. And this is actually advised. Like, this is actual code that people said you're supposed to do. So I always feel insecure about this, and I never really liked it because it wasn't really central to the functionality. I didn't really see the value of errors. And yeah, so I never wrote functions like this, but when I got a real job and started working with other people and I saw that they had these in their functions, I'm like, okay, it's time for me to start coding for real now. But I never liked it, and I didn't do it unless somebody made a comment. So, but TypeScript got rid of all of that. All of this is replaced by that. You don't have to feel guilty for omitting this. You can just put string here. Now, everyone who uses this function, TypeScript will warn them if they're not passing in a defined value or if they're passing something other than string in. So if you like minimalism, TypeScript is actually good. It gives you this safety without you having to manually write these checks. These are type checks. This is typing or checking the types. It's testing for the types. So, yeah, it's a lot better. Okay, so and this is just a demo of So, if you probably picked up on this, but if you put this comment before a statement, it will give you an error unless there's an error. So it's basically expect an error here. So yeah, if you pass in nothing, it'll give you an error. If you pass in a number instead of a string, it'll give you an error. All right. And then there's interface boilerplate. I remember looking at all these interfaces and types and just seeing these sprawling blocks of text that aren't actual code. Like, all this disappears after it's compiled. It doesn't get sent to the browser. It's just like ghost code. It just vanishes when it compiles. So we're filling our files full of all this text. It just seemed so just extra to me. But the thing is, when you see an interface, you just get used to ignoring it. Like, it doesn't matter. It's not doing anything. It's just describing a thing. And then maybe something uses it, but then it's just describing this, and it's not actual functionality. It's just a restriction. It's a mechanism for making sure that this is safely used. So yeah, you get used to it. It's fine. Like, yeah, it's definitely worth it. It's not like I would rather it didn't exist. It'd be nice if magically it could infer this type of thing, but and there are like full stack frameworks that will share the types from the API endpoints. I think I've never used them, but I think they exist. But in general, it's not too bad to do this. You just do it once and then it's done. So yeah, that makes it valuable though. It makes it the safety it provides. It's definitely worth it. Okay, and then another concern I had was rigidity. TypeScript would make code harder to change. So every time you try to change something, the IDE would like flash colors or underline red everything, and it's really distracting. And then figuring out how to untangle that and make changes just was really annoying. But then we go back to the magical any type. If you feel like TypeScript is getting in the way while you're trying to get something done, just type with any and then worry about the types later. It's like you should not feel guilty about that at all. It's really easy to do, so just do that. Like here, you can just type or pass in a number as any, doesn't care. Yeah, we already talked about this, but this actually makes it less rigid than you'd think. So there always will be a little bit extra syntax, but it's really not a problem. It's very easy to deal with. For the value it provides, it's actually incredible value. Like once you start using it, you'll see. I have some examples below, but anyway. So yeah, that one will give a warning. That's valuable. All right. So this is a big one for me, a huge one, because I like clean code. And you'd think that all this extra syntax is not clean. However, in the long run, it makes your code cleaner because you can more easily move things around as you want. It's very easy to change things and not feel anxious about what may have broken because TypeScript can warn you about what may have broken. So let's take these three components. There's the grandchild component, child 5, and parent 5. All right, so grandchild has grandchild props. Random property is a number, and it's taking that random property and raising it to the power of 10. So that's a pretty cool component. And then we have this middle component that is kind of pass through. It has one extra prop it grabs out and renders that in a span. And then it's got the grandchild props it just passes down to the grandchild. Okay? So notice here this cool pattern. The child props are the grandchild props, and this is an intersection with its own property that it adds onto it. So yeah, this is really nice. This type of thing helps with when you're passing, when you're prop drilling, basically. Anyway, so in your parent though, you could pass in a string like you're not supposed to. Let's see. No, that's message. That is supposed to be a string. And then the property is a number, and that's good. That is what it expects. This uses this component. So the parent component doesn't have to be concerned with the exact types here, but it will, because of how the middle component is defined, it will also get the type safety. So if you change this to a string, it will warn you. And that comes all the way from here. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But also, if you come up here and go to the grandchild component and decide, you know what, we're going to make this a string, and now we're going to just render it here inside this expression here, suddenly everywhere that needs to be updated is highlighted for you. So it's incredibly easy to make changes like that if you want. So this is like freeing because I don't have to worry about hunting down every little thing that could have broken. It's now like a stress-free thing to do to make a change like this if this component becomes concerned with what, if its purpose changes in any way. Then you can just track down, like you'll see your files in VS Code, they'll all turn red, whichever ones have errors in them, and then you can just go through and fix the errors. And yeah, it's just so much faster and it's nicer to refactor. And because it's easier to refactor without stress, it makes it more likely that you'll refactor, and that makes your code cleaner. So yeah, it's a huge deal. That actually maximizes the rate of improvement of your code base, the ability to change quickly. And yeah, it's a thing that improves your code quality like a lot over time. So, and the other thing about this is it makes code easier to reuse, because if you were the parent component and maybe this, grandchild component, maybe it's really generic and maybe you have concerns that reusing it, you're coupling to it, and so you're worried about it breaking you later at some point. With TypeScript, you don't have to worry about that, because the person who changes this, the build will fail for them. And so they are responsible for going and looking at all the implementations, all the usages of this reusable thing, and fixing it before they can build the app. So it's really nice to have that like guaranteed safety when you're there we are. When you're reusing things. So it makes things easier to reuse. Yeah. So another major concern I had was it makes fast experimentation harder, the strictness of TypeScript. Because even if you use any a lot, the overhead of TypeScript is not nothing, because you are adding as any here and there. And so it would slightly reduce the speed of development, but speed of development is really important because you're thinking and typing, and it's like a fast feedback cycle. So you have an idea, you type it, and it comes back, and you're like, okay, so I can do this, I can do this. So it's like a continual iterative process. But actually, I found an unexpected way that TypeScript actually helped with this short-term experimentation, and that's with reducing the short-term memory load. Because while you're dealing with a lot of moving pieces, if you start messing with one thing, having to remember what all the other contracts are, in addition to the changes you're making, actually burdens your short-term memory. And so you have to basically remember all these things. But with TypeScript, those things are defined and they're easily accessible. Like you can easily look here. Like TypeScript brings you details in line where you're working with this thing. And so you know that this is going to take a string. And so you don't have to remember details like that. And so TypeScript removes the chore of just having to remember the different APIs you're dealing with so that you can focus on the one thing that you're trying to change. So there are pros and cons, because changing the syntax is a little annoying, and dealing with the any's and whatever. And it's not perfect, but it is a huge relief to be able to not have to hold these things in memory as much, or have to click to definition all the time, when it's literally just brought to you what this expects and what it returns. Yeah, so it's just nice. So, all right, the next thing when it comes to rigidity, I think that's this section. No, experimentation. Right, Copilot. Copilot, every suggestion it gives you is basically an experiment, because it's doing its best to come up with a suggestion. Actually, just today I wrote like a Webpack loader, and it was vanilla JavaScript, and Webpack loader. Yeah, Angular. It's using Webpack. I think most projects are probably still using Webpack, but honestly, I don't remember. I wish Angular was using Vite, but they don't really have plans to because it's unstable still. But anyway, I was writing a Webpack loader for an Angular build something, and I I typed the name of a function, and Copilot suggested like 20 lines of code, and it looked good. And when I pressed tab, I was like, wait a sec, something's wrong here because nothing looks wrong. And the thing is, when you get these giant blocks of suggestions from Copilot, it's like not going to get every detail right most of the time. And so TypeScript actually will immediately highlight the things that are wrong and you can fix them. It won't highlight everything that's wrong because TypeScript doesn't know all the details of the logic that need to happen, but it can help you in the basic ways to get things right. So it actually is pretty cool because Copilot can make you code faster. So yeah. And then, right, when it comes to experimentation with new technologies, TypeScript will help you by giving suggestions and throwing errors when you use it incorrectly. So this is actually the very first thing I noticed a long time ago when I was, first time I touched TypeScript code, it was with the new version of Angular 2. And so I remember being like, okay, I looked up the syntax. I'm a little insecure because it was my first day at the job. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to be able to remember everything? This is going to be difficult. All right, here we go. This is where I have to really get ready to Google everything. But then I imported what I knew I need, a component class or a component decorator. And it was like giving me options, like already it was suggesting things, and it was so nice. I was like, wow, the API documentation is like right here in the code. So yeah, that was super nice. It's not perfect, but it's actually incredibly good. It's incredibly good with your own code base and with new libraries you're using, and libraries you've used 100 times but you can't remember everything. It catches spelling errors. It's just awesome. That is the nicest thing. It's for that reason alone, it's worth it, I would think. Yeah. So you can kind of see why so many developers who hated TypeScript before grew to love it, because all the ways we thought it would suck, it actually is the opposite. It's kind of crazy. I'm not done with the list yet, but yeah. So for example, use sync external store. How many people use that? I don't know, but it'll give you a warning when you're not using it right. Expects 2 to 3 arguments. When you first type it, it'll give you this list of arguments expecting. Okay, so on store change, it returns void. So this is like a side effect. It needs to happen. All right, and then there's a bunch of unknown types. But the thing is, as you define these parameters, it becomes knowable. And so what you return here, it's able to infer other things. At least I think it is. I haven't used this hook very often. So yeah. So it's super helpful. Okay. All right. So the last thing that I think this wasn't as much of a concern with me for me as it was is always for everybody, because it's kind of just an ever-present concern with technologies, is how popular is it. But TypeScript is already more popular than Java, C#, C++, and PHP. Well, like when they're ranked with JavaScript and TypeScript, TypeScript ranks higher than these languages. So TypeScript is solid. It's really solid. And it's still growing fast. And it's because it's easy to adopt, and every little bit that you adopt gives you value. And so you use more and more. So yeah, so you see a ton of people that just, in the React community here, that, just basically have praised TypeScript. Okay, just open all these links. Tanner Lindsley, guy who created React Query, also known as Tanner Stack Query. So Adam Rakis tweeted this. I should probably read it. This is general pro TypeScript sentiment. Tanner Lindsley, a year ago, I would have resented this post. Today, it's a 180. TypeScript is now the first indicator I'd look for in a hire, maintainer, library, dev product, etc. Yeah, it's a big deal. Honestly, Angular got it right by adopting it really early. It's funny how much, how controversial an opinion it was back then, and now it's like a pretty, it's pretty funny how obvious it's become. So, good job, Angular team. I guess it could be seen as risky from the outside, but I think once you use it, you understand. But yeah, I get it. Like, it's annoying to hear such strong pro anything sentiment, but this is an exception. Like, I used to really get bothered at React developers for their separation of concerns. How they used to make fun of, how they still make fun of Angular developers. The ones who still believe in the separation of concerns between HTML and CSS. I used to get mad at that, and now I realize, like, oh, okay. When do you edit the CSS and never the HTML? Or the HTML, not the JavaScript. Like, they are accomplishing the same thing. They're going to change together. So anyway, sometimes the people who are annoying are actually right. So don't hurt yourself by ignoring them. Give it a chance. And actually, like, if they end up being right, it kind of sucks because it was annoying, but in the end, you'll get value from it, and your life will be better. So that's what I have to say about TypeScript and the tribalism, on all sides. I don't even think of it as tribalistic. I just think I can understand how it can sound that way, but I think of it as an obvious thing that TypeScript really is just great. Anyway, so here's another one. TypeScript has caught 3 property typos across React table and all of its first class plugins. Pretty cool. Also pretty impressive that it was only 3. Yeah, true. When I converted the first code base that I converted to TypeScript, I remember just being surprised, like, wow, that actually is a bug. And just finding them and be like, wow, just converting to TypeScript once, just doing it one time, just solved like 3 bugs, like found 3 bugs, and these would have been found. And yeah, it was actually about the same number. But there were a couple more that were iffy. They're like, okay, that technically could be a bug, probably won't ever happen, but there were 3 serious bugs that it prevented. So, all right, Tanner Lindsley again. My code is so safe. We have so many tests. I can't imagine anyone's written enough tests to fully cover TypeScript's strict null checks. This rule alone will literally enforce you to be the most defensive, edge case aware, error handling programmer you can imagine. Okay, I used to hate the idea of being this type of developer. It's so much work. Are you actually getting anything done? And first thing you should know is you can always use any, and you can use the non-null assertion. It's an exclamation point. You get used to it. So these are, but in general, it's actually really good to know if something could be undefined or null. So this is a good rule to have. It's a good rule to have the strict null checks. It will save you. It will save you so many times. Seriously, that with Angular components, for example, there is a lifecycle method called ng-on-init. And before that runs, a bit before it, the component inputs are undefined. They're undefined. And so, but you could technically still interact with them as if they were defined. But strict null checking will warn you about that, and it actually makes your code safe. And don't you want to code in a way that won't break? It's actually really nice. All right, next, Kinsey Dodds. I've been using TypeScript for 1 week now, migrating from Flow. Breath of fresh air. I'll blog about this in a week or two. This is really great though. I never used Flow. I went to a meetup and learned about it, but if you look at it, it's actually not that different looking from TypeScript, but apparently there are significant changes. But yeah, TypeScript is pretty good. It's got problems. Ryan Carniato talks about the problems, or talks about his struggles with the problems. I don't know what the specific problems are, but he has talked about the problems. What has caused him. Sometimes it causes you to make a less convenient API when you're a library author. But these things, like when you get really into the weeds with TypeScript, that's usually when you're authoring a library for a lot of people to consume and you're trying to really give them type inference. Yeah. Okay. TypeScript isn't making your life worse. It's just showing you how bad your life already is. That's what he said in the workshop, explaining how annoying form elements are to get actual runtime safety. So yeah. TypeScript. Yeah, it's actually a sign of maturity, I think, to want to face your problems now instead of later. And TypeScript does that. You can delay it with doing any, and that's fine. But to be aware of the things that can go wrong, it makes for a much less stressful developer experience. It is so nice compared to vanilla JavaScript when you just know that the things like the glue code is going to work. The internal logic could be wrong still, so unit tests are good, but when you're accessing properties from this thing and that thing, TypeScript makes sure that you're not doing something completely stupid. And understanding when you're doing something stupid early helps you fix it. And that fast feedback cycle really, really helps the overall momentum of the project. So you're not like running into bugs and trying to find where they happened when TypeScript could have warned you about it immediately. So there's a trade-off between immediate negative feedback and delayed negative feedback. But in the end, the access to have that quick feedback is invaluable. Yeah, this is kind of that same sentiment. TypeScript is worth it, but it is so not easy. TypeScript, yeah, you will struggle with it. But it is extremely valuable. So it's worth it. All right, Dan Abramoff. And I think this is like a different case because Facebook, I think they still use Flow heavily. But I looked at the React source code a month or so ago, and I saw something that looked like TypeScript, but it wasn't. And then I realized, oh, the types are right. They're there, and it's a community maintained thing. Okay, but it's pretty similar. But anyway, so he's coming from I think that perspective a little bit. I'll admit I'm not as knowledgeable about the React community as I am with the Angular community, but yeah, for a huge project like Facebook ads code base, I can't imagine working without static types. We use flow but point stands. For a personal website, I wouldn't use types at all. For a small project, it depends. Are there conventions for lazy TypeScript? Only type props and any rest? Actually, yeah, there are. Type things as any. That's fine. Like incremental adoption is better than no adoption. And yeah. But for a personal website, I would use it. Because I don't want to have bugs in a personal website either. I want the fast feedback. I want to make something that's right. So yeah, I can't. Yeah, I don't like vanilla JavaScript anymore. It's more stressful, honestly. That's the word I would use. I keep using that word. Okay. Wes Boss. The 5 stages of TypeScript. Oh, damn it, TypeScript. What is it now? Really? That's never going to be an issue. Okay, let's see how to make this error go away. Oh, oops, I forgot that. That was a bug. Good catch. That pretty much explains it. Although some of them you'll see are like, okay, that's being picky. And you will use like a non-null assertion or like a type of any. But still, this is yeah. It turns out in order to solve a problem, you have to be in a different frame of mind than when you caused it. And TypeScript is the thing that nudges you into the other frame of mind. And the initial reaction to being nudged into a different frame of mind might be anger. So, but it's worth it. Someone asks you, why is TypeScript good? In a tweet, what is your answer? I love this. Linked. Perfect answer. All right. TypeScript has a bunch of super handy commands for refactoring your codebase, made available in most editors. So TypeScript is information, and it's available for it's static type checking, so static analysis, and it can be useful. I don't honestly use these, but I basically use them when I change something and then it automatically highlights an error somewhere. I probably should look into more of this, but anyway. All right, Ryan Florence. So it started with this tweet: how the code looks in your head versus how the code looks in real life. So you imagine creating like this, and it ends up looking like this. And then I like this. Or how the code looks if everybody used TypeScript versus how the code looks when people use JavaScript. So this is like what I was talking about, validating all the inputs, and that's not a text. This is an image. Okay. So yeah, just validating all the inputs, and just use TypeScript. I don't know how. Oh, this is probably type safe. All this. Yeah. See, type inference, like sometimes you can't even tell if you're looking at TypeScript or JavaScript. But yeah. Okay, another one from Ryan Florence. I forgot how much I love not messing around with migrations in NoSQL databases. I don't like messing around with NoSQL databases at all, but first time using TypeScript with NoSQL, and it's helping me wrangle my app code quite well. Okay, that wasn't an amazingly positive review of TypeScript, but it helps. Okay, words of wisdom in the React training Slack. TypeScript is the cardio of coding investments. I just read this. Check this out. So he responded again. So David K, he's the next guy we're looking at. There's two types of front-end developers: those that dislike TypeScript and those that dislike TypeScript but dislike plain JavaScript even more. Yeah, the first ones are, I feel like they're dwindling, but anyway, second, Ryan Florence, two types of front-end developers is unassignable to there is. It's just a grammar nitpick phrased in the form of a TypeScript error. Anyway, I thought that was funny. He's a funny guy. Okay. David K. Piano. Unfortunately, after learning TypeScript, you learn how much worse untyped JavaScript is, so you stick with TypeScript forever. That's been my experience. I don't want to code in JavaScript if I can choose. Obviously, I did today because it wasn't worth figuring out how to set up the compiler for just like a Webpack loader. Anyway. All right. Another one from David K. When using TypeScript in libraries, it's important to have as strict and exact types as possible. I would say the more exact, the better. That's what I'm going to say. Because when you're a beginner, you shouldn't worry about it. Just adopt it and incrementally improve. But when using TS in apps, sometimes it's better. Oh yeah, look at that. Sometimes it's better to tell TypeScript I know what I'm doing and do some workarounds, typecasting, whatever. Then spend hours figuring out what the perfect types. And yeah, as a beginner, I did obsess over like, okay, why is this error happening? And then I could have just typed it as any. I know my coworkers were doing this, so but I was like, I want to know what's happening, and that prevented me from progressing. But I also learned TypeScript pretty fast, so that's kind of the path I chose, and it kind of worked out. But yeah, I agree with him. When using TypeScript libraries, when creating TypeScript, when using it in libraries, right, you want extremely strict and exact types. So in Stated App, that's what I've done. That's been 90% of the work is the TypeScript stuff because I know how useful it is to people. I spent First of all, to create a state management library out of the dozens that are already out there, you have to believe that it's valuable. And then knowing that that work already might be pointless, to spend 90% of that work, or like an extra 8x of work, focusing on types themselves, that's how valuable I know types are to people. So yeah, it is worth it. Okay. It uncovers bugs early, IntelliSense, autocomplete, and more. Don't treat it perfect like it's a perfect thing. Yeah, but still, it's good. One important non-obvious reason why it's so important to get good at TypeScript is that third-party libraries and other developers don't always produce perfect types. You can save hours of pain by either fixing the types or making good workarounds with advanced TypeScript techniques. This is kind of an advanced thing. You'll get to it probably, but anyway. So, here's the thing. TypeScript, it is frustrating, but you'll learn more about it. And still occasionally you'll sink an hour into a type problem. Just randomly. It'll just randomly hit you and you're like, ugh. And you're Googling these weird things. You're learning about generics and conditional types and mapped types. And you're just trying to get this thing done, but TypeScript isn't going to let you. But then you can't commit it because everyone expects you to have an app that builds. And you don't want to put like that, ESLint exception or TSLint, whatever. So, yeah. But in the long run, it will save you more time. And so here's the thing. TypeScript isn't going away. It definitely is not going away. There are way too many people who love it, and it's honestly too valuable to go away. Types are even being proposed to become part of JavaScript itself in a limited way, but still. I don't love it, but the idea is that you can paste typed code inside your Chrome DevTools and it won't yell at you. There are actually extensions that allow you to copy without the types. But anyway, so it's not going away. And it doesn't mean you have to love it, but it doesn't mean you have to not hate it. You can hate it, but the one thing that I think you should do no matter what is try it. Because if you change your mind, your life will be better. If you don't change your mind, you'll at least have good ammunition of specific things that you can use to say why you hate TypeScript. And it won't just be this like fuzzy thing like it was for me, like it's so much syntax, it's rigid, all these things, without really knowing the specifics of why and how it actually works. So either way, you should try TypeScript because it's not going away, and you're either going to be talking about it or you're going to be using it. So yeah, that's my advice for all the React developers right now, because Angular's had this for a long time and they were right about it. And what are the odds that somebody's going to be wrong about everything? Angular, it's not as easy to create components as it should be. It's kind of a complex framework. It's got a lot of things that are wrong with it, but it has a few things that are extremely good, and you shouldn't ignore the other tribe. You should give it a try. Try to take what's good from everything, and your life will be better for it. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to say right now, because over the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of React developers have started to learn TypeScript, and the same thing happened as in the Angular community just 4 years later. So it could happen earlier, but I think in general we have too much tribalism in the front end, and in technology in general, just in life. But it really, really helps to try the other side and experience the good parts from it, and then incorporate them. You don't have to fully embrace everything, but yeah. So that's my advice, and I hope I never have to work in a JavaScript code base again. But we do what we have to do. But yeah, I hope anyone watching will, if they haven't already, that they will start using TypeScript. So, all right, see ya.